Right. Okay, right. So let's resume learning the Ramban. So let's begin with Perek Chofei Posach Chof Beis. Perek Chofei Posach Chof Beis. Yes, the Ramban here is picking up on the question, the very unusual phrase which the Rishonim struggle with Imkain Loma Ze Anochi. She said the child, the fetuses struggle inside her. And she says Imkain Loma Ze Anochi. So first he brings Rashi. Imkain, says the Ramban, quoting Rashi, Godel Tzaro Iber, Loma Ze Anochi Mispaleles Misava Leheroen. If the pain of pregnancy is so great, so why did I want it in the first place? Why did I daven? What did I want this for? Why was I praying for children so much if this is the result? Loshen Rashi. That's the Rashi. Ramban quotes Rashi. And he says, Ve'inenu nochai. He disagrees. He says, this doesn't seem correct in terms of the explanation and understanding this in the Pasuk. Rabbi Avram says, that's Ibn Ezra, Ki shalas anoshim. Rabbi Ezra says, she asked other women, Imir lahem kochach. Did this happen to you? Did you experience it? But Timran alone, they said, it didn't happen to us. So according to Ibn Ezra, the question she's asking is, if this is the case with me, why was I zoche? Why did I merit such a strange pregnancy? And I was asking everyone else, no one else experienced this, so why is it happening to me? Why did it happen to me? According to this, the posuk is missing words. Effectively, you have to add in, if so, this has occurred in Cain. This minhag has occurred. Why have I got this strange pregnancy? The posuk is missing, and it's not complete with this explanation. So he disagrees with both the Rashi and Ibn Ezra in terms of this unusual phrase of Loma Ze Anochi. Why is it that I am? And therefore, Ramban says, V'hanochen be'enai, and it says, it seems to me, Ki omra im Cain yiyeh li. She said, if so, that this occurs to me, that this is happening to me, Loma Ze Anochi ba'olam. It's a striking explanation. She says, why do I exist? Why am I here in this world? Halavai inenu, sha'omas shelo yisi, kitam hashka shelo hoyisi eye. Right? He brings a posuk in here, like I wasn't, so will be, whatever. So the idea is that she was saying she didn't want any more. It was the pain that she was experiencing. She was saying, Loma Ze Anochi, why is it that I am? Why is it that I exist? Why is it that I'm present in this world? Not why is it, like Rashi says, right? Loma Ze Anochi, why did I want this in the first place? Not like Ibn Ezra, that she said, why am I experiencing a strange pregnancy? But simply, Loma Ze Anochi, why is it that I'm here? Why is it that I'm I, if you like, that I am me? And why do I exist? And the Ramban carries on. And she went to seek Hashem. Loshen Rashi, and again he disagrees with Rashi. Lahagid ma yehi b'sofa. Lahagid ma yehi b'sofa. Rashi says, why did she go to seek Hashem? And Rashi explains, as we know, Lebeis Midrasho Shel Shem. She went to the Beis Hamedrash of Shem Ve'eva to literally ask guidance. Ma tehi b'sofa. Rashi says, what's going to be at the end? What's going to happen to her? Right? Drisha etzel Hashem rak lehispalel. He says the word drisha, lidrosh, to seek Hashem, doesn't occur in a context of asking what's going to happen, right? But in the context of tefillah. Ketam dorashti es Hashem va'aneni. Brings psukim in Tehillim, posuk in Tehillim. I sought Hashem, I sought Hashem, and He answered me. Dirshuni, seek me out, you and live. That's Hashem speaking to us through the Novi. Chai oni imed rosh lochem. If I will, again, this is also, it seems, an expression of tefillah. So what the Ramban says is, again, you have to see this in the context, right? How the Ramban is learning the whole piece here, right? She's experienced something, and an experience which she finds too difficult to bear. So she says, why do I exist? I don't want this anymore. She doesn't want to carry on. She wants to give up life. And what does she do? Hashem. So she goes to daven. So it's a totally different way of understanding the psukim. Do you understand? It's not that she's got a question and she seeks an answer. No, she doesn't know why she exists. She doesn't know, she can't bear it anymore. And her response is tefillah. So this Ramban is very, very powerful in terms of the way the Ramban is learning the psukim, because it's an object lesson in how to respond to a moment of extreme pain or crisis. We turn to tefillah. That's what she does. She davens. Her response is she goes to daven. And what answer does she receive? Okay, Vayoma Hashem lo, continues the Ramban, next pasuk. Shnei goyim bevitnech, 2 nations, right? The reassurance she receives is Hashem says to her, do not be afraid. Because of the fact that she's pregnant with twins, that's why there has the arguments, the strife going on within her. In other words, she's informed that she's pregnant. She's going to have twins. And it's possible, says the Ramban, that that Hashem was informing her further as follows. Because these 2 nations are going to fight one another, they made at the beginning of their creation strife between them, as a hint to that which would occur at the end. Right? In other words, in the Ramban, and we've seen this previously as well, Ramban says this in Lech Lecha, and we'll see again further in this parsha as well, the constant idea of Maisa Ovasim and Labonim. The Ramban is very, very focused on that. That every little tiny thing that occurs to the Ovos it has to occur so that it can occur later. Right? That this is the idea the Ramban understands. It has to occur as a microcosm of what will transpire later. And according to Ramban, that is what is going on. That is what is going on here. Right? She's experiencing something. Right? Because it's a hint or it's a beginning, and it's playing out in a microcosm of what will happen at the end, the way they will fight with one another. And then the Ramban adds some words which are difficult in a way to understand. He says, "Va'atzo and now yonuchu v'timtza monoach v'hashket lenafsho." And now they will rest. He says, "Va'atzo yonuchu," and now they will calm down from that strife, right? V'timtza, and she will find monoach v'hashket lenafsho, and she will find tranquility to her soul. It's a bit cryptic what the Ramban means, right? What the Ramban seems to be saying is, again, following through the whole thing. According to the Ramban, Rivka is in a state of extreme stress. She's in extreme panic and she doesn't know what to do and she doesn't feel like she can go on. So she davens. She turns to Hashem to daven. What reassurance is she given? She's given a reassurance. Number one, she's informed what's going on. Right, that she's pregnant with twins who have different missions and etc., and that she's experiencing something now, which almost like the comfort is, it has to happen now because this is what will happen in the future, and this is their experience, and they will strife, and the Torah spells it out. One will, one is up, the other's down, etc., and then he says that once she's been informed of this, now they will rest. And she will therefore find tranquility. So I think what the Ramban is trying to say is that experience that she experiences is not one that she will have to experience on a constant basis. So she's given that reassurance. She experiences it while she's expecting, and she knows now why it's going to happen. But she also knows that there is a peacefulness. She can experience periods of tranquility now, at the present state. It won't always be like this. It has to happen in this way because of what will happen at the end. But it won't be a constant thing from now until then. And it seems, according to the Ramban, that gives her the reassurance that she needs, the peace of mind. It's both the knowledge as to why it's happening and why it has to happen this way because it will play out at the end, and also the fact that it won't be constant from now till then. It's cryptic, but I think that's what he's trying to say.
Master of it, because of what happens later in Jewish history, these things happen to the others. It's like turning the other way.
Exactly, absolutely.
Yeah, but it's very not way I've ever learned.
The Ramban understands, the way the Ramban puts it in Lech Lecha is that things have to happen to the others in order for them to happen to their children. The Maisa Ovasim and Labonim, the things happen in reality. It's not just Bris Bein HaBasorim, a prediction, a nevuah, a prophecy. This will occur to your descendants. That's there as well. That's present as well. You understand? But according to the Ramban, the things happen It's a mystical thing in a way, right?
Not just the lineage of Yitzchak and Yaakov.
It's experiences, it's things that they experience.
No, but it's saying it's Esav.
Okay, that's an interesting thing. It would seem to be, and actually that's all in a way borne out by the next one we'll show, which is to do with the wells. There's two Rambans in the context, at least two. The wells occupy a big space for the Ramban. He brought them in Lech Lecha as one of his key examples of Ma'aseh of a similar bonim, right? The wells, the whole episode, the central part of the parsha of HaTorah Toldos, say the central part, the only part which only involves Yitzchak, really, right? The digging of the wells, this thing. And for the Ramban, that is the archetype example, right, of Ma'aseh of a similar bonim. You know that, the digging of the wells, because the whole parsha, you see, he spells out here, seems to be superfluous. What are we learning from it, right? They dig wells and the wells are filled in, and he dug the wells again. His father dug. What are we learning from all this, right? So look at the Ramban now. The first posuk in the next parak, Parachovov posuk Aleph. So he says, second. Yeah, 1 second. Should I find the right one? Yeah, okay. First he spells it out in terms of the experience. The wells comes afterwards. This is about the experience of the famine. And the Ramban point picks up on the fact, and again, because we learn it sometimes unfortunately superficially, so we learn, yes, okay, we understand there's a famine, Avimelech, wife, this, that, you know, there's subtle differences that are not so subtle, actually, they're just obvious. There's a very different experience. Yitzchak's experience is very, very different to Avraham Avinu's in terms of what he goes through, right, when he has to go to Avimelech. And the Rambam picks up on this and says this is a direct experience which predicts a different type of exile that the Jewish people will undergo. So Ramban says, aside from the first famine. So number one, he says, it's a strange phrase, right? Apart from the first famine. What was the first famine? There was no famines before that. He says, maybe there was no famine in the world until Avraham. That was the first famine. That's why the apostle counts from it. This was famine number one, right? And this is the second famine, yeah? Otherwise, why should I mention it? He says, it seems to me that this is to tell us. People remembered that famine. People talked about it. It was big news. And everyone said, this is why Avram went down to Mitzrayim, because of this famine. That's why Hashem gave him great honor, right? As a result of his experience in Mitzrayim. So Yitzchak thought, well, my life should play out in the same way as my father's. And therefore, he had an intention to going down to Egypt, right? Until Hashem says to him, right? Until Hashem says, do not go down to Mitzrayim. Your mission is different. And you're not allowed to go to Mitzrayim. Why? So we know the reason. But Tam HaManiya Omra B'Seinu, the Medrash famously says he wasn't allowed to go to Mitzrayim because Ata Ola Tamima Ben Chutz Haaretz Kedai Lecha, as we're familiar with, right? He was brought up on the Mizbeach, and therefore he was not allowed to go to Chutz Haaretz. Oladaiti, but he says, the Ramban says that he thinks that he feels there's another deeper reason here also going on. Oladaiti Nichlal Oid Be'inyan Remiza Ba'osit, that this process what Yitzchak has to undergo, and the difference between the process of Yitzchak leaving because of a famine, and Avraham leaving because of a famine, is a hint to the future. Higolas Avraham el Mitzrayim, Mipnei Arav, the exile of Avraham to Mitzrayim because of the famine, Remes Yiglu Bonov Shom, right? That was a hint that his children will go to Mitzrayim. That's the logical hint there, right? Avraham has to go to Mitzrayim, and his children will go to Mitzrayim to be enslaved. Says you have to, very important to understand that. When Avram Avinu goes to Avimelech, Avram goes to Avimelech, that's not Golus, that's not exile. He was living there, right? He really wanted to live there. It was his own wish to live there. That wasn't the same. That wasn't an exile. But when Yitzchak goes to Avimelech, here, that is a Golus. That is an exile. Clearly in exile, he didn't want to go. He had to go. There was a famine. There was the definition of exile is when there is a push factor, right? There is something pushing you out of the place that you are, right? That's what it is. That's what exile is. He went into exile from his place to the land of the Plishtim, which was where his father lived. And that's significant, says the Ramban. His father used to live there. So he's gone from a place that was his place to a place that was an ancestral holding of his father. The Yirmos, and the hint, therefore, is Legolas Bovel, to the exile of Bovel, right? The next major exile. The first exile is the exile to Egypt. You with me? There's slavery in Egypt. What is the next major exile? The Babylonian exile, Golos Bovel. Which was the place where their ancestors lived. The exile of Bovel is an exile to a place of their ancestral holdings. The land Ur-Kasdim is in Bovel. That's where they're going back to. And this Golos is all hinted in, right? To the it's all hinted in, if you like, to the actions that Yitzchok. The Yitzchok, he says, now you can understand everything that happens to Yitzchok. They didn't take his wife. Avram, they took his wife. Yitzchok, they didn't take his wife. All he had there was the Golus, the exile itself, and the fear. But they didn't take away his wife. And beginning, they say to him, anyone who touches him, they should die. And eventually they say to him, you should leave us. Afterwards, they say, right? That's what they say. And then they say, they say you should go, right? And then afterwards, there's the covenant made. This all plays out, he says, in the exile of Bovel. The exile then the same way because of the famine they experience. Zalafez Rav, I think, is one of the afflictions they experience in that Golus that transpires. He's referencing here the famous Medrash when the exiles leave Yerushalayim after the Churban Bayis Rishon and they go to Bovel and they're experiencing this parched thirst. Do you remember the Medrash in Eicha? I think it is, right? And they go away and the Moavim, they give them things to drink and there's really just air and because there's no water in the what's it called, the flasks or whatever, right? So I think that's what he means, yeah? So there's this same experience, yeah? There's the famine. What happens in Bovel? They don't. Once they're there, they don't enslave or afflict them. They achieve high office in Bovel. We know that the great members, the aristocracy, yeah, the aristocracy in Bovel actually are well respected when they're there. Etc. They should go after that. They talks about they're sent back and who's sent back with them, etc. Because the same thing transpires, right? They are told to leave. Eventually, they're told to leave and they're told to return. Okay, and there's a covenant made because there are those who, I think they're told to accompany them and participate or even lead in central parts of the efforts in the rebuilding of the second Beis Hamikdash. So again, for the Ramban, everything that transpires here is a Maisa of a Simon Labonim. And with Avram, the experience of the Golus is like a Golus Mitzrayim, right? And his wife is taken away, and it's the affliction that they suffer in Mitzrayim. Yitzchok is not the same. Yitzchok lives. He lives. He's okay. I mean, the experience is not the same as Avram, right? His wife is not taken away from him, which I think the Ramban is understanding as like a sort of representative of living a relatively normal life, except for the fact that he's in Golus, that he's in exile, and there's that fear and that sense of being a stranger and everything else, and that's all there, and that's what they experienced in Bovel as well, right? And eventually they're told they're sent back, which is what happens, of course, at the end of the 70 years of the Golus Bovel as well. So it's all parallel. And then the Ramban says with the wells, if you turn a little bit later on, the Ramban says every one of the wells, right? Every one of the wells is meant to represent something else. They're all called different names. And he digs these wells. Vayikra Shema Ber Esek. Yisaper Akosav V'Yarech Benyan Habeirus. Can you see this Pasachov? The Torah goes to great length about the wells. The aim of Pshuti Sipur Toelas. The simple explanation of this story doesn't seem to have benefit to us. V'lo covered Godly Yitzchak, and it also doesn't give great cover to Yitzchak, right? V'hu ba'ovi v'asoyasam b'shoveh, and they both did the same thing. It says the Ramban, there's something deep and hidden in it. Because each one is telling us the future. He says a well, a be'er mayim chaim. When it says the words, he dug a be'er mayim chaim, a well of living water. This means the house of Hashem. That's what it means. It means the Beis Hamikdash that his children of Yitzchak will make. This is the well, the living well, the Beis Hamikdash. So that's the reference there. And then he says that each of the three wells that are described here, each one refers to each one of the Botei Mikdash. Yeremos, the hint is Labayas Orishan, Ashes Asku Imonu, also Son of Kamamachloyus, Kamil Chomas Achechrivu. With the Beis Rishon, the first Beis Hamikdash, there was a lot of strife, and they fought with us until they destroyed it. Vashini Korah Shmo Sitno. The second one is called Sitno. Shem Koshem in Orishan. Sitno means like hatred. It's worse than the first one. It's more than oppression. It says about the kingdom of Achashverosh. It says that same phrase. It says in Sefer Ezra, they wrote this Sitna, and all about, and the whole day, and all his days, it says, there was opposition and hatred to us until they destroyed us. There was this terrible Golos. And the third one, however, where it comes from. All right. This is the future Beis Hamikdash. There's no strife, there's nothing. Brings the pasuk, Hashem will widen our boundaries. And it says, okay? And that's what it says. He brings a pasuk in Yechezkel, this idea of breadth that applies to the third Beis Hamikdash, because all of the nations will stream towards it. So for the Ramban, these three wells experience those three epochs in Jewish history, and specifically the three Botei Mikdash. The first one is Asku Esek, the fact there was strife and difficulty. The second Beis Hamikdash is called Sitna, because it began with this opposition to it, the whole Persian involvement in the building and everything else, and then it ends also, of course, with tragedy. And finally, you have the third one, which is Rechovos, which means openness, because there is no more of the strife and there's only peace. So this again is an example of how the Ramban learns Bereishis, right? How he understands the Pesukim. Okay. Now we've got a few minutes just to look at the Ramban towards the end. Yeah.
More wells.
If they were what?
Should there not be more wells? They were related to all the gods.
So I think he's understanding the wells referring to the three Botei Mikdash more than the specifically. Yeah. Exactly. Well, obviously, the Golos is connected to that, but his understanding is connected to the three Botei Mikdash. Yeah.
Learn differently to Rashi in terms of the Elat Mima.
I don't think so, because Rashi also quotes that, I believe. Yeah. So on that point, I think it's the same.
Rambam is Rashi's first, presumably, historically.
Ramban quotes Rashi all the time.
Ramban quotes Rashi.
All the time. Yeah, absolutely. Ramban is very, very focused. You see very, very often he'll quote the Ramban and Ibn Ezra, right? And then he will bring his own pshat. Not always, but especially if he differs from them. That's a very common theme. Look at Perek Chav Zayin Pasuk Dalet. When it comes to the brachos, just to see something on this. So what is going on in the dialogue between Yitzchak and Rivka? Not the dialogue, sorry. What is going on between the fact that, all the Mefarshim have struggled with this, the whole parsha, obviously, but also specifically this angle. Yitzchak asks Esav to bring him food so that he can give a bracha. Rivka hears, V'daber Yitzchak, Posakei el Esav, and she does something else, right? So the question is, why does she do that? And if it's because that she knows through Nevuah that Yaakov has to get the brachos, why on earth doesn't she say something? Why doesn't she tell Yitzchak, this is what I've been told, this is the Nevuah I've received? You understand? Because clearly Rivka must be going on that basis, and that's how the simple explanation of the whole parsha. The Rivka is going on the basis of something, she knows something has to happen, right? So look what the Ramban says. So that my soul can bless you. This is Yitzchok's instruction to Esav. He wants to give him the bracha Esav, so he gets the bracha of Avram to inherit the land. He wants to be that owner of the covenant, right? The hemshech, the continuity. You with me? Because he's the Bechar, he's the first. That's Yitzchok's intention. But Nira says, it would seem, you have to say that Rivka never said anything to Yaakov, to Yitzchok, that the older will serve the younger, right? That was never said. She never passed that information on. Otherwise, it's unfathomable, right? How can you possibly understand that if Yitzchak had been told this prophecy that the older will serve the younger, how on earth could he then instruct Esav, and intend to give Esav the bracha, which was clearly going against the word of Hashem, the prophecy that had been delivered, that the older one will serve the younger one? It wouldn't be successful.
Can I just ask you, even though Esav was like the firstborn, he relinquished the rights of the firstborn, had he not?
So that's another question, and whether that's, and how is that aware, who is aware, whether Yitzchak is aware of that and everything else? Yeah, that's another issue. It's another question. He's not dealing with that specifically. He's dealing with the specific between Rivka and Yitzchak. At the beginning, she doesn't tell him the way of Musar and Tznius. She went to seek Hashem. She didn't go with Yitzchak's permission, and so she did it of her own accord. Or she said, how can I can tell a prophecy to a prophet, to a Novi? Yitzchak knows, he's a Novi, right? He's godled than the one who told me. She went to Shem and Ava. So she's thinking to herself, hold on a second, I need to tell Yitzchak, like, what's going to be in the future with his children. Like, he's greater than the person who gave the Nevuah to me. I understand, right? So that's her. So that's one second. Let me finish. That explains. That explains, right, why she didn't say something then. Okay, because she felt she needed to have that knowledge because she wasn't informed of what was going on. So she said, "Well, I must find out." So she went of her own accord a different route to speak to a Novi to get guidance, which she received, yes, by going to the base Midrash Shel Shem, going to the Shem. But she thought, I don't know, I could tell Yitzchak. What can I possibly tell Yitzchak? Va'ata, what about now? So why didn't she say anything now? Va'ata, now, she didn't want to say to him, this was told to me years ago, before I gave birth from Hashem. The Omraful, she said, but so, through his love for him, lo yivorech Yaakov, he won't bless Yaakov. That means his love for Esau. He won't bless Yaakov. So what he will do, it's not that he won't accept what I say, he will, but then he loves Esau so much, he'll just leave it. There won't be any brachas. He won't deliver any brachas. He'll leave it all b'dei Shemayim. Okay, no brachas. Brachas off the table. You understand? That's what, yeah? V'hi yudah, and she knew. And she knew that through arranging and orchestrating things in this way, this was the only way that Yaakov would receive the brachas from him with a full heart and a nefesh chafetza, in a willing and desirable way. And therefore, that's why she had to orchestrate it this way. She couldn't say anything at this stage because she said, again, the Ramban has done a few things here. Number one, he's explained why she never said anything at the beginning. Because she said, how can I say something to someone who's a greater Novi than the person I received it from? Okay. Then it gets to this stage. Now. And she says, well, if I say something now, he's so close to Esav, there'll be no brachas at all. He won't accept it, but he won't be able to, he won't give, if you like, he won't give either bracha. And that can't happen as well. So Yaakov has to get the brachas now. And therefore the only course of action is to do what she did. Or he says, or perhaps, him sibos meis Hashem, and it could be because maybe Ramban is not entirely happy with this explanation. So he gives another one, which is effectively saying, this is all arranged from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Or him sibos meis Hashem, there's a causation from Hashem. Kadeshi Yisparach Yaakov. This is all part of Hashem's plan, so that Yaakov should receive the brachas. The Gam Esav, and also Esav as well. But Rikas Hacher, if he gets the bracha of the sword. Below levado niskanu alilos. He finishes off with very, very powerful words. 4 words. But ultimately, below levado niskanu alilos. That means plots, plans, the secrets of the mysteries of creation are only to Hashem alone. In other words, what the Ramban is telling us, I think, here is like this. He has an explanation, which is his first shot, right, as to how this happens and why. There is a rational quote unquote explanation as to why perhaps the thought process, if we want to put it that way, of why Rivka acts the way she does, why she doesn't say anything then, and why now she feels whatever she would say is not going to help, and therefore she goes with this plan. But the second explanation on Ramban is saying, effectively, you want to really fathom this, you can't. That this was all part of Hashem's master plan, which we can't understand. Lo levado niskanu alilos. That the trail. We say this in Musaf from Rosh Hashanah. Yeah. Va'alilos mitzadei gova, right? Yeah, alilos, that's the same word, right? Alilos mitzadei gova. Alilos is like an alul is the thing that's like the result. It's like cause and effect. That's what alilos really is. The plots, the plans, and the plan. The alilos mitzadei gova are the plans of man's footsteps, right? So that's where lo levado niskanu alilos. But ultimately, the steps and the fact that A leads to B leads to C leads to D is actually HaKadosh Baruch Hu's part of Hashem's plan, and is not something we can fathom or understand. So this is a very, very important perspective, I think, on the whole of the second half of the parasha. Yeah, it's one of the most difficult parashas in the Torah to understand. The Ramban says Hashem has a plan, and we can't always fathom and understand.
We said that Rivka knew that Esau was not of good character. Yitzchak did not.
Many Mephoshim do say that. Some Mephoshim do say that. It also has its problems. Every angle in this parsha has its questions. Every angle has its questions because how could Yitzchak not know that? Yitzchak didn't know it.
Rivka could see that Esau.
Yeah, exactly. That's right. And how? But then the question is on Yitzchak. How could Yitzchak not see that? How could he not know? How could he not see? This is. Yeah.
There are plenty of Mephoshim who
exactly.
Didn't see that.
Yeah. There are. I believe there are. I think that's correct. There are those who say that. Yeah.
It's the bracha.
Yeah.
Because he he gives them a bit. But
yeah. It's a very, very incredibly complex parsha, but at least we've given a tiny insight. Have a very good Shabbos. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks for coming.
I read an essay on